you almost get so much out of those quick meetings than you do trying to meet formally and discuss big matters, when sometimes big pictures show up really quickly within just like nonsense conversations. I'm a big sucker for coffee, especially over here getting introduced to flat whites. I'm having way too many, but like there's just something about coffee and one-on-one conversations and not having to problem solve right away, because that's the whole thing about here is what we're working towards in Worcester, something that's going to come down the road. So we may not need a solution right away, but picking at it now and then, having the conversation about how's that injury, or how are we doing today with regards to the conversation we had last week. Good example would be we have a young athlete who's trying to increase his body mass and trying to stay consistent with it. So it's the conversation each day to keep him accountable of like, hey, how's the weight today? He knows he needs to weigh himself pretty consistently. So it's one thing to just have him do it, and it's another thing to just ask him, what's the weight like today? Or how you feeling today with this added food or energy that you need to increase in, or the calories. So it's one thing to have him eat more calories. It's another thing that he maybe just doesn't feel good eating that much. So we actually had that conversation, I think it was this week, and we as a staff are trying to get him to increase his weight, where his initial thought was whether or not where is that weight going to go and what that may look like in a body composition sort of manner. That's where just like the reassurance of you're still growing, we're going on the right path with this. It's not going to be a massive gain quickly. So it's those little reassuring conversations sometimes.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Trauma, Training and Transformation, the podcast that looks at how we explore movement to help heal the mind. And today, it's not just about working on ourselves, but it's working in a collective. Today's guest is someone who works at the art of the rebuilding process, both on himself, but also with the athletes under his care, helping athletes not only being strong physically, but feel strong mentally again. I'm joined by Matt Gallant, assistant strength and conditioning coach at the Worcester Warriors Rugby Club. Matt works behind the scenes, working with elite performance athletes where pressure, expectation, injury, and identity all collide. He's one of the people where athletes turn to when they feel fragile, doubtful, or disconnected from the bodies, what's working out. So this episode isn't just about sets and reps. It's about resilience. It's about trust. And it's about the emotional labor coaches carry that no one else sees. Matt, thank you very much for being with us today. Would you mind giving a bit of background about yourself?
Yeah. Thanks, James. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so my name is Matthew Gallant. I'm a strength conditioning coach here in Worcester. I grew up in Canada. I've been a strength conditioning coach for about 8 years now. I made the move here about 4 months. And yeah, so like James said, I'm assistant strength conditioning coach with the Worcester Warriors, currently in season, preparing for a game tomorrow. But yeah, we've been doing well so far in the league. We're actually in the Champ League, so it's just one league below the Premiership. But we are coming back from administration, so things are looking good, and the goal is to get back into the Premiership next year.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Matt, and it's great to have you on board. Spending some time with you in Canada, I know how passionate you are about not just rugby, but the strength and conditioning side of the sport, and you use your life experiences, your coaching techniques, and your empathy of the players to try and get that message across and share that expectation with them. So when you think about strength and conditioning at the elite level, as you mentioned there in the championship, what does strength really mean beyond the physical element?
So yeah, with that question, I'm going to go refer to some of the athletes that to me, strength is the athletes on the team that have structure. So what I mean by that is they come in every day and they almost have their own self routine. You'll see it with some of our like veteran players, some of the guys that are on the leadership team. Like it's things that you don't really need to ask them to do, but they know the importance of it and they'll do it. And so that's their structure, whether that's they come in early to get in some extra mobility, to maybe get some treatment done. It's the stuff behind the scenes before coming in as a team to better prepare them for the daily task of their training and preparation for the game that weekend. And with that, I think it does come with maturity as well. So, for example, we have a player who was a former British Lions player that he comes in at around, I believe he comes in around 6 a.m. every day to prep himself prior to the preparation of maybe some other players. He has a little bit of a coach player role. So he's extremely busy, but he's also extremely organized and passionate towards, the team, but also he knows that he needs to put his body right as well.
You mentioned earlier on about some players come in, they know what the routine is and they get on with it. But some people are maybe not the best trainers, and sometimes you need to coerce them into doing what's right or changing their behavior so then it becomes routine for them. Does he share their messages or the senior guys share them?
Yeah, I think our staff, like our physical staff, I think we do that really well. And it comes with those one-on-one conversations for sure. So, for example, maybe some of the younger guys on the team that are building their CV and wanting to get that experience, the training demand for them may be a little bit demanding, and they may come up to us saying how tired they are, or in England they say knackered. But it's, to me, it is just, if you're coming in at around 8 o'clock and then leaving around the same time, around, let's say, 3 or 4 o'clock on a regular day, like there's stuff in between or outside of that needs to be done. And I think that's, as S&C coaches, we have those conversations with those athletes pretty well to maybe just justify what is that works for that individual athlete. Just because one player is doing it doesn't mean it's going to work for them. For a good example, like I was working with a professional hockey player, and he was with his team and they were really into ice baths, for example, and he was trying it out to better recover. And then he found out from his, let's say, recovery scores that it just wasn't working for him. He didn't feel as well rested, and he found that his sleep wasn't as effective. Like he wasn't getting as good of sleep as he thought he should have. So what he actually did was he referred to massages, because he did have quite a few injuries in the past, and he found that just massages from the physios was a better kind of result for him. It made him relax more than going into the cold where it was a little bit maybe too stressful for him. Not saying that either one is better than the other. I'm just different examples for different things for different athletes. But yeah, I think it is education for the athlete, especially the younger ones, trying to figure out what works for them and maybe what doesn't work for them.
Of course, and your interactions with athletes from different sports helps to build your knowledge base and support your foundational work on, the strength and conditioning side with athletes. So then again, the best information, up-to-date information, but more importantly, specific to them. So then they can be the better athlete individually. You talked there about sharing that information. Strength and conditioning is not just about pushing weights. It's not about doing the exercise. You also get to see the mental development of these players. So how do you support that, the emotional and the psychological side of development, whilst players are in your care in the strength and conditioning environment?
Yeah. So with the development, like you just said, it makes me refer back to when I was the director of performance for an academy school. And to me, that was an eye-opening kind of dilemma, or not dilemma, like an opportunity. And that was, I think, the first opportunity that I found, that being fully submerged into this job where I had athletes call me at 10 o'clock at night, and they almost needed whether reassurance that they were working hard enough, or they needed some advice or guidance towards another thing. So it is just giving them support. I think, like, it is not just a 9 to 5 job. It's, you need to give them the support when that support is needed from them, and having that relationship with the athletes, of having the ease that they can come to you when they need it. I think that's honestly the biggest thing for me. So I think that's something that I've always tried to get across with athletes. And I've noticed that with, I think, just with all the athletes I've had, like, or I've worked with, I've almost had better relationships with some of the athletes now, almost after I'm done working with them. So now that I'm in England, I'm not working with as many hockey players anymore, but it just shows that the relationship that we had prior, and still keeping in contact, and they're still asking me questions to this day. I think that just speaks volume of support, whether it's you're working with them now or not.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I think those conversations you have with previous athletes and your own individual journey as an athlete and into strength and conditioning is really, it rings true to the purpose behind this podcast. Yes, movement's important, and I want to re-emphasize that using movement can heal the mind, but also them social connections too in that environment, sharing life stories, sharing that weight of expectation without any kind of stigma can be a massive support to players. Do you think about those vulnerable phases that you have with these players going through competing for position in the team, or they need reassurance of that they're doing the right thing so they can get selected, or they're sharing a life experience where they've had something go on in their life that's playing on the mind and it might impact their performances. Did you go about speaking them so then you can help build resilience, reassurance, and rebuilding that person during that conversation? So they're not just an athlete, but they're also a human being.
Those conversations, I think they're just best when it's outside of the training. Sometimes we would have conversations during like refueling sessions, or it would be whether we're waiting for a team meeting. It's those little short meetings, right? I find sometimes those little informal, unscheduled meetings, you almost get so much out of those quick meetings than you do trying to meet formally and discuss big matters, when sometimes the big matter pitch or the big pictures show up really quickly within just like nonsense conversations. I'm a big sucker for coffee, especially over here getting introduced to flat whites. I'm having way too many, but yeah, like there's just something about coffee and one-on-one conversations and not having to problem solve right away, because that's the whole thing about here is what we're working towards in Worcester is something that's going to come down the road. So we may not need a solution right away, but picking at it now and then, having the conversation about how's that injury, or how are we doing today with regards to the conversation we had last week. Good example would be we have a young athlete who's trying to increase his body mass and trying to stay consistent with it. So it's the conversation each day to keep him accountable of like, hey, how's the weight today? He knows he needs to weigh himself pretty consistently. So it's one thing to just have him do it, and it's another thing to just ask him, what's the weight like today? Or how you feeling today with this added food or energy that you need to increase in, or the calories. So it's one thing to have him eat more calories. It's another thing that he maybe just doesn't feel good eating that much. So we actually had that conversation, I think it was this week, and we as a staff are trying to get him to increase his weight, where his initial thought was whether or not where is that weight going to go and what that may look like in a body composition sort of manner. That's where just like the reassurance of you're still growing, we're going on the right path with this. It's not going to be a massive gain quickly. So it's those little reassuring conversations sometimes.
You touched there on rehab and the education behind improving calorie intake and energies. So, what do you feel your role is then with rugby athletes, but athletes in general who are going through that rehab phase? May lose a little bit of self-confidence because they've gone from playing to now trying to recover from injury. What do you see your relationship in that? Rebuilding trust and ensuring that they have the confidence then to return to play.
Yeah, I'm really lucky with this opportunity because I also get to assist into the rehab of strength and conditioning, and whether mostly it's with long-term athletes at the moment. And going back to that reassurance for those athletes, is it can be overwhelming with those athletes getting different messages from whether it's from a doctor to a physio to an S&C coach on what to do. I think what we do a really good job of here is we have our S&C staff and our physio staff all in the same staff room, and every day we have meetings and we talk about every athlete every day, whether it's healthy, good, or okay, this person is at this stage of the rehab. But we come together as a staff first. We discuss what we think is their best trajectory of their rehab journey. And then when that happens, we then have a meeting with those athletes and tell them this is the plan we want to go with. So that there are days that they come in and they may feel flustered or they may feel like they're behind, but it has happened in the past where we would just always go back and show them this is where we are right now. This is where we're building into. And it just gives them a little bit more of a peace of mind in my thought. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing that, mate. Hey, if this podcast and this conversation is resonating with you, please like, follow, subscribe at Trauma, Training and Transformation or follow me on my YouTube channel at James Alder 003. Matt, you talked there about discussing and having conversations with the staff about players, the players' expectations, how you can get the best out of the athlete. But what about you? What about you as a staff? Who's there to help carry that mental toll that you guys carry? Because it's your role and responsibility to get the athletes ready for games. So who shares that responsibility with you guys?
I think we all do. We all know our role really well, but the thing about this job, and I think that's really why I was extremely excited to get over here, and it's the support. It's not just the support for the athletes, but I've never felt the amount of support within a job that I'm doing, within the staff that is there. Whether that's the GM, whether that's the head coach, assistant coach, the S&Cs, like it's just so rewarding knowing that if I need help on something, I can ask for it. And that's something I need to work on, is asking for help, because I always feel like if I'm asking for help, I'm a bit of a burden. But it is like, that was the first thing I remember telling my family back home and my parents, like, what's it like over here? It's just the sheer amount of support makes it that much easier if I ever need something or assist with something or have questions. And I think we do such a great job of that. One of the busiest physios I think I've ever seen. He's always extremely busy, and if you ask him a question, he's just so sincere and so in the moment that how to explain it? Like he's there with you. He could have so many things that he needs to do, but if you ask him a question, he's right there present with you. And I think that is something that goes an extremely long way, because if you're not present with the person in front of you, sometimes you can almost feel like you can almost have a conversation where they may not feel as not important, but maybe not as supported. And he is honestly an amazing character. Like, yeah, I can't say anything bad about that guy. He's just an amazing physio, and he is someone that I work really close with within the rehab of some of the athletes. And he gives you feedback right away if you need it. And that, I think, gives me clarity. So it gives then the athletes clarity, and then just kind of spirals from there.
A lot of people listening to this podcast, their interactions with sport, in this case rugby, might be only seeing the showcase event, the game. And it's great, they get to interact with the players, cheer the teams on and stuff like that. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, player preparation, the coaches setting up the sessions and preparing the teams, but also the strength conditioning physios. So what are the biggest misconceptions then, do you feel, people may not know about strength and conditioning, and what do they not see? What is the hard work that you guys do that people never see?
It's every day, I think. Like, there's stuff that needs to be done pretty well every day in a professional rugby setting, because there's athletes at all different angles in all different phases of their training, especially in the rehab, right? So we're getting updates every day on how rehab is going, but within S&C, it's every day. And for example, like, I'm doing my master's right now, so it's long days, and then when you get home, you have more work to do. Mm. And it's like, I've said this a little while ago, but I think my life has been way more structured and organized ever since I was a S&C coach than I was as an athlete, because we typically need to be there before all the athletes, and then we're staying until we get our work done. So like a regular working day would probably be about 12 hours at the stadium. And then, yeah, it's a grind. But if you're in this job of an S&C coach for your self gain, I don't think you'll last very long. Like, one of my first mentors I worked with, Elliot Richardson, he always said, like, it doesn't matter what letters you have behind your name, but as long as you're like a certified nice person and you genuinely want success for other people, you're going in the right avenue. Like, I think that's exactly what you need as an S&C coach. Like, you need to give so much more for the athletes than personally for you getting to maybe another job or another opportunity. That's the gratitude I think that I get from this job, and it's extremely rewarding. Like, especially I think that's why I like the rehab side of working in S&C, is because you see them build from the ground up again, and there's just so many lessons you see in that. Like, let's, for example, say it could be an athlete that's just extremely skilled, and maybe they didn't refer back onto like their physical preparation or their strengths, but now they have to kind of take a step back and rebuild, and maybe they do need to get stronger now. Maybe they need to increase the kind of the tendon stiffness or the strength within their tendons. And it's a little bit humbling for sure, but you also see the character that some people gain from that, but also the consistency that needs to be worked at every day for that.
Thank you. Movement is the heartbeat of this podcast. Movement as therapy, mindfulness, identity, transformation. So, in your role as a strength and conditioning coach, have you witnessed that transformational change where a player's mindset has changed through movement as much as the physical side of things?
Yeah, for sure. It's going back to those daily habits, I think. It's like we were saying with some of the veteran players, and I think it comes with the multitude of things. It's the education for the athlete. Like, okay, we need to increase like the just like muscle strength, let's say in your glutes. And maybe we recommend that they do this every day. And then so it's doing those little things each day to put into their routine.
So, in your role as a strength and conditioning coach, you get the opportunity to work closely with athletes using movement. Strength and conditioning is the exercise, but have you seen that mental change, that behavioral change through that environment, really? So the player's mental picture is also changing as much as the physical body is changing through training.
Yeah, 100%. Like if you're not, you can see it sometimes with athletes where they may lack consistency. You know, one day they're really good and then they spike down and maybe their intensity or they're just not there at that level. And I think in the mental side of it, like it's got to be a continuum. Like it's some days, there's some days we need you to push on this day. And if you're just not mentally there, like that's, I think, where we come in and we can help you through that day. Like some days it is going to be, okay, if you're not feeling it today, we can dial it down a little bit. But then there's days where that trust within the S&C or the staff and that athlete, like just saying, we really need you to push it today because those next few days they're going to be days of recovery. But within the rehab side of it, like we were saying, is so much character can come out of that if you treat it as like a challenge. Sometimes the mental side of it can be like extremely rewarding, and it really challenges you just to maybe ask for the help that you need more often. Like for example, we had an athlete that just had shoulder surgery, and working closely with him, he's a very, very smart person, and he knows what he's doing within the gym, but he doesn't really sometimes doesn't ask for the help. So for example, going from a standing position to a seated position is a little bit challenging because he's locked into that shoulder. So it's as easy as just asking, like, can you help me on my way down? And that's pretty tough mentally, going from an athlete that can run, 9.5 meters per second to I need help sitting down. Like that's pretty mentally taxing, and just having that support for those athletes, I think it helps a long way. It goes a long way. And it's doing that, I think, every day, knowing that, hey, if you're showing up, like we're going to show up with you, and just take it day by day. Really, sometimes it's as easy as just trying to get through one day if it's not a very good one, and then reassess the next one. And just hopefully they know that they have a good support system.
Thank you very much. Your place in the rugby community of where you're at Worcester, you get to see different playing abilities, different interactions where players are coming back from injury or playing really well. Does any of that resonate with your own experiences through sport, your own challenges of coming back from injury and to go through a protocol to get back? Does that empathy come across because you've gone through that similar?
100%. Yeah. Like for me, I tore my ACL, and I think it'd be about like 7 years ago. It'd be about 9 years ago, I think. And yeah, it does mentally wear on you. And I think knowing that, I do give the sympathy sometimes. And when I first started as an S&C coach, I think I gave sympathy almost a little bit too much. But there is a certain amount of threshold of stress that an athlete does need to go through to get that adaptation that they need to get to. So I do feel for some of the athletes, especially when they're going through an ACL reconstruction, rehab. I think just understanding that, right? Like, I think that was maybe one thing that goes like a long way, was that plan, whether it's 12-month plan, 10 months, or short term, maybe it's 6 weeks. Going through injury and having that support, I think it's just, I go back to saying that again, but it just goes such more a long way. You definitely feel for it because, uh, like, these are professional athletes, and that thought maybe that they may not come back as strong as they previously were, or whether they're going to come back from it at all. Mm, that does resonate in your head sometimes, and you kind of always have to go back to your values, right? Like, what is it that you value? What is it that what about those values, or those attributes that you have that are going to assist you to get through this rehab process? Because I think there is so much growth opportunity. I think, like I said prior, like going through those trials and tribulations, and that in itself is humbling. And I think there's maturity that you can gain from that.
There's going to be people listening to this who are not involved in sport or rugby specifically. So if anyone out there who's listening, who may be struggling something physically, mentally, emotional trauma that they may be experiencing, what would be the one principle of movement or strength and conditioning training that we'd share with them that would help to rebuild their lives from today?
Physically, I think, like we were talking prior, I think it's like, before going into the physical attribute, I think it's being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. I think that goes just such a long way in purpose. And I think I made that mistake I earlier on when I was in university, growing up in like sports my whole life, I think, well, I definitely do have like mental health issues, and I think everyone does have some to an extent. And I remember when I first realized that I had this, I took like the workload that I had, whether it was school, and I lessened it, and I kind of like, because I was doing less work, I had more downtime to do nothing, and it almost seemed like a spiral where things weren't getting better mentally. And now this move and this job that I have now is the best thing I've done in my career. And although I'm the busiest I've ever been, the support staff and being part of something that's bigger than yourself, like you're working towards something, and just having all those put together, like it mentally makes it that much easier. For example, like, I'm not a morning person, and I think a lot of S&C coaches are going to be like, "Whoa, that's weird," but I'm not. However, it's so much easier for me to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning when I know there's a team that, is rooting for you to be there for them. I'll do that any day of the week. And so that in itself is kind of like my mental health fixture, and it helps me go such a long way. Think as well, I made the mistake last year where I was living in Vancouver, where I was working and I was living by myself at the time. And I quickly realized it wasn't a place where I wanted to work for very long. So what I made the mistake of was, I'd go home, I'd finish my work at night. I think I got home around maybe 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and I just work towards the next opportunity. So it's like, when something's not right, I try and fix it, and I almost fixate on trying to get that right as soon as possible. So I need to like kind of relax on that a little bit more, but it is, things will come eventually. And I think another thing with that is our head coach, he's really big with our team on being a family. Since we're a team that it's the first year that we're all together, um, we tries to push on celebrating the wins. And what does that look like? So with him, whether we score a try, whether we get an advantage, or we achieve a penalty, right, towards the other team, like, he us to celebrate those wins, and celebrate them with all 15 players on the field coming together, like as a huddle, because that right there is showing the support, showing that you're in it together. And so I think those little attributes go such a long way. And I made that mistake as well quickly a few years ago, where when working with the privateers, we just won the Canadian championship. And in my head, I was like, I wanted that so badly. And then as soon as we achieved it, it was almost like a feeling of, okay, what's next, right? Rather than celebrating that win, because it was like a long process. I think that was like a full year in the making to get that team started, having the, worked coach, being on tour, having a successful year. Like, there was a big process in such a short time, and then we had a great successful year. And then in my head, I'm like, okay, I need to know what I have next rather than, like I said, take those wins, be with the support staff you have. Yeah, I think those are the biggest takeaways. And I think the biggest one, like I said a while ago, is don't be scared to ask for help. Still trying to work on this one a little bit. I always thought I didn't like asking for help because it was like a pride thing, but now it's because I now quickly realize it's because I don't want to be the one that slows down process. So, but having that support and that having our S&C staff and our physio staff in the staff room together, it just makes it that easy because we all have a really great relationship with each other. And I think that also, if we didn't have that close connection, I'd probably be a little bit more hesitant to ask for help.
Well, being a part of that family, as you mentioned, is massively important because you build those connections with people, builds trust. You mentioned taking that one step, doing that action. Yeah, sometimes it's often can be quite dynamic. It can be quite emotional. It can be quite challenging, sometimes often heavy. But making that one step can be the difference between regaining yourself or being in the dark moments that you're suffering with. Matt, thank you very much for being with us today and sharing your roles and your experiences in the world of strength and conditioning. I see your role building the body through training and set programs for the athletes, but more importantly, you're there in the down times when the players are vulnerable, maybe talking about rehab, maybe talking about the performances in games. And having you there allows those players to build trust in you, yes, builds their own self-confidence because they've been able to offload some of that emotional challenge that they're living on a day-to-day. And having someone there as a soundboard in your role is massively influential.
It was about the strategy of having those athletes physically. So a strategy that I have been using a couple times now during rehab was, for example, we have an athlete that's just been battling a couple injuries this year, one after the other, and it can definitely be mentally taxing. For example, like last week, we took him to the recovery pool to do like a swim session. And so instead of just like being on the side and just saying, okay, swim this length at this time, just jumping in with them, doing the conditioning session. When I have the time to do it, like I'll try and get the conditioning session in with them so he knows like, hey, I'm not alone doing it. And then it doesn't hurt to just show them like, yeah, like I said, you're not alone doing it and it is tough work. So it almost gives me a bit of a better mindset of not just knowing what he did physically that day, but how he's going to feel the next day. And maybe that'll make it a little bit easier for him to continue with his rehab, that he knows that, hey, like some days I'm going to have a little bit extra help and I'm going to have a partner alongside of me.
Thank you very much for sharing that. It's a very powerful message. That relationship between athlete and coach can be life-changing, not just about physical development, but changing the mindset. So then they're better prepared for challenges to come. Matt, again, thank you very much for joining me today, and good luck for the rest of the season. I'm sure Worcester, with your support, are a better place now to be successful this year. And whatever challenges they face, you'll combat it together. Thank you very much. Good luck. And I hope to see you again soon, mate. Either in Nova Scotia or on a rugby field somewhere.
Yeah, if you're in Worcester, let me know and I'll save a ticket for you.
That'll be awesome, mate. Thank you very much. Guys, listen, if this conversation resonated with you or the podcast is what you're looking for, please like, share, subscribe on at Trauma, Training and Transformation, exploring how movement heals the mind. Or you can find me on YouTube at James Alder. Equally, I have a Substack at Transformation Through Training, where I provide helpful self-tip guides and deeper insight into how movement can help. You can also support me to ensure these conversations can keep going by buying me a coffee. All links below in the description box. Remember, movement starts when you move, one step at a time, one rep at a time. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you at the next one.